Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. We've got another unit builder this week, and unlike the last one, this video is going to focus on the newest hero to be getting the Resplendent treatment, Caeda, or Caeda. You know, I thought we had all come to the consensus that her name was pronounced Caeda, until we got that trailer this week for the localization of Shadow Dragon, and they literally call her...
Friends with Caeda and Tiki?
I don't know. I'm confused too. Anyway, let's take a look at Caeda's kit and see how she's aged over the years. At 5 stars level 40, Caeda's neutral stats read as HP 36, Attack 25, Speed 37, Defense 24, and Resistance 24. Much to my surprise, Caeda has 3 super boons in Attack, HP, and Defense. All good options given her playstyle, but based on her stats alone, Caeda is quite weak. She's got considerably low HP, low defense, and low attack, but modest resistance and speed. Of course, when she gets her Resplendent ult, she will get plus 2 points to each of her stats, which is always appreciated. Now, it goes without saying that Caeda is a very popular sword flyer that's available as both a 3-star and a 4-star unit within the regular summoning pool, and I know quite a number of people who've already got a plus 10 Caeda lying around, so let's take a look and see what her stats look like at max merges. Alright, now these stats are starting to shape up a bit more. 31 attack is still very low, but with the right build, this stat can definitely be salvaged. Her speed, on the other hand, is quite excellent, and she'll even be able to tank some dragons and magic units on account of her high resistance. Honestly, let's just move on to her weapon, as its refine is still pretty solid and hasn't aged nearly as poorly as some of our other Resplendent heroes. So, Caeda comes with the Wing Sword, which has 16 might and is naturally effective against armored and cavalry foes. On its own, it's not amazing, but having effectiveness against these two types is still really nice, as it of course allows her to deal 150% damage on half of the movement types in the game. Now, as far as her weapon refine goes, she gains Flashing Blade 3 as its effect. If Caeda's speed is greater than the foe's speed, it grants her an additional special charge per each of her attacks. And this is a solid refine for 2 reasons. 1, flyers, for God knows what reason, don't normally have access to Flashing Blade. They can inherit Heavy Blade, but not Flashing Blade. It makes absolutely no sense. But it's awesome that this is her weapon refine because, 2, she's got fantastic base speed and will definitely be able to make good use of it. Alright, with all of that having been said, let's take a look at some builds for Caeda and see what we can do with her. First up, our budget build. So our budget build for Caeda is going to be pretty reminiscent of one of the budget ideas mentioned in my last unit builder for Seteth. They're both speedy flyers, and although one is obviously a lance unit and the other a sword, they can essentially play very similar roles. For that reason, while on a budget, you can't go wrong with good old Fury and Desperation. Fury 3 grants her plus 3 to her base attack, speed, defense, and resistance, at the cost of dealing 6 self-damage after combat. Ordinarily, the chip damage could be somewhat problematic for a unit as frail as her, but it's a reliable way of putting her into desperation range, which will of course allow her to attack twice consecutively before the foe can even counter. Now, I don't want to harp on this budget build for too long because aside from Fury, it's basically a copy of the same budget build I gave Seteth earlier this week. Fury plus Desperation naturally synergizes with Brazen skills on account of their HP requirement, which is why I plugged Brazen attack speed into our S slot. I imagine that if you're a FEH pass holder, you probably already understand this, so let's talk about how this build can be upgraded. In our A slot, we are going to upgrade Fury 3 over to Fury 4, which instead grants plus 4 to all stats and deals 8 chip damage after combat. The reason that I'm opting to keep Fury 4 in our build is because it synergizes with the beast skill I'm about to give her. Desperation certainly works with this build, however, I wanted to give Caeda something more fun, and so I chose Pegasus Flight 3, which is an incredibly niche skill that Caeda actually has the stats to make use of. If Caeda's speed is greater than the foe's speed -7, it automatically inflicts a penalty on the foe's attack and defense in combat, equal to half of the difference between their res stats. I know, this skill description has a lot of math. I hate it, but we can break this down. Firstly, Caeda has to be faster than the enemy, which is already our goal because of her weapon refine. What's nice about this condition, however, is that it is easier to trigger because her speed has to be greater than the foe's speed at -7. That means that even if a foe were to outspeed her, she could still potentially trigger this effect. The in-combat debuff that's applied is perhaps the more complicated part, however. It inflicts a debuff on the foe's attack and defense equal to 50% of the difference in res before combat, with a maximum penalty of -7. When the description says before combat, keep in mind that it's referring to her base resistance, not her in-combat resistance. And if the maximum penalty we can apply in combat is -7, that means that we've got to have 14 more resistance than the enemy in order to make the most of this skill, which is kinda steep. Of course, this is why Fiora, who comes with Pegasus Flight, also has Fury 4 in the first place, since the skills obviously work well together. As for Caeda's C-slot, I do think that Caeda really wants Speed and Defense Reign 3. Its ability to inflict -4 on the enemy's speed in combat is kind of a no-brainer, but in an effort to increase Caeda's overall damage output, I think that inflicting -4 to the foe's defense would help her out tremendously. Of course, if you're satisfied with Caeda's damage output and would much rather focus on her tanking potential, attack speed Reign would be the preferred option since the foe will obviously have their attack hindered, allowing Caeda to take less damage. As for her Sacred Seal, you can continue to keep Brazen Attack Speed or even Brazen Attack Defense, since they both still synergize with Caeda's Fury 4 skill. However, Phantom Speed is another great option worth considering that often gets overlooked. With it, any skills that require a speed check will treat her speed as if it were 10 points higher. Well, between her weapon and Pegasus Flight, I can assure you that she's a great unit that could make use of this skill. You also just can't go wrong with Swift Sparrow or even Sturdy Blow, in case you're trying to help give her a little more defense on the player phase. This slot is honestly quite flexible. Alright, and that just leaves her special, which we haven't really talked about. Since we started with our budget build, my initial choice was Glacies, which has a cooldown cost of 4 and scales its damage boost off of her high res. Since we were initially running Desperation, this skill worked well since Caeda could double the foe and then have Glacies ready for the next combat. However, if you're choosing to run Pegasus Flight or really any other skill besides Desperation, you could easily get away with running Iceberg or even Gale Force. Iceberg works well because unlike Glacies, it has a cooldown cost of 3, meaning that Caeda can initiate on the player phase to get 2 special charges. The foe would counter for 1 charge, and then she'd be able to activate Glacies on her follow-up attack. The same could be said for Gale Force in case you'd rather she zip around the map. Okay, and that's pretty much it for our builds today. I didn't want to repeat a lot of the same information from my last video, but before anyone mentions this in the comments, I am aware that Caeda is also a great unit to give Dive Bomb 3, on account of her high speed of course. Fury doesn't really synergize with Dive Bomb though, so I would probably recommend Swift Sparrow 3 or even Sturdy Impact as solid alternatives for her A-slot. Alright, here are what Caeda's stats look like at max investment. Since Caeda is obviously in the 4-star summoning pool, I know that she is a very popular candidate to +10, especially with 10 Dragon Flowers that she can inherit. She's got the potential to become so much faster and so much bulkier, which she really needs. Okay, and that's it for today's video everyone. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, please consider giving this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of unit builders, summoning sessions, and first impression videos for a lot of our banners. Speaking of which, if you haven't already, I do recommend watching my most recent summoning session video for Setith. It was live streamed on Tuesday with Tacho as a special guest, and I think that we had a really good time. Also, please let me know what you guys think about Resplendent Caeda. Do you like her art? Do you already have a +10 Caeda? Isn't it such a fun coincidence that we happen to get both Resplendent Caeda and Resplendent Marth just as we get the announcement about the FE1 localization? Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, that is it for today's video. I'll catch some of you guys on stream this weekend over on my Twitch channel. We've got our theme teams going on this weekend, Saturday at 5 PM and Sunday at 2 PM Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see some of you there. And if I don't, then until next time, happy saving, happy summoning, and take care. is green. Ayana says, okay, so we got like 3 votes for green, but I'm seeing more votes for red. Alright, we're gonna go red, guys. I'm sorry. Daddy Hector time. Can you guys hear the odd? Oh! Oh! What? Oh my god! Yo! Oh my god!